You're listening to School Counseling Simplified, a podcast with easy-to-implement strategies for busy school counselors. Here's your host, Rachel Davis from Bright Futures Counseling.
Who's feeling a little stressed this time of year? The end of the school year can be a little overwhelming, and it's hard when you're only seeing your kiddos once a week or even once a month in their class lessons. What if there was a way for you to extend your reach and get support from parents and caregivers at home? Well, I've got the solution for you. Join me for my free training where I'll share how to create a summer SEL toolkit. Thrive instead of just survive at the end of the school year. I'll be helping you wrap up the school year with ease, providing parents and caregivers with social-emotional tools to support students, and helping you connect your students with community resources over the summer months. This will allow you to extend your reach and close the gap between each year. I think you're going to love this training. I'm offering 2 different times, both on May 15th at 1 p.m. Eastern and 6 p.m. Eastern. Go to stressfreeschoolcounseling.com/training to save your seat. Everyone who attends will get a PD certificate of attendance and a free resource. So who's ready to thrive instead of just survive? Can I get an amen? All right, guys, go to stressfreeschoolcounseling.com/training to save your seat for the Summer SEL Toolkit training. Okay, let's go to today's episode. You're listening to another episode of School Counseling Simplified. It is already May. I cannot believe it as we're winding down the school year. I know many of you even get out this month. So this month I really want to focus on wrapping up the school year, tying up those loose ends, closure, all the things to get us prepared and ready for a summer break. Today I interview Malisa Hepner. Malisa is one of our Impact members. She's been a member for over 2 years. She's amazing. She is an elementary school counselor. She formerly was a social worker and then a teacher and now a school counselor. So she brings a variety of experiences to the field. And her newest thing to add to her resume is that she is a published author. Malisa shares how she supports her students and even how she supports her staff through building relationships and rapport building strategies. Malisa has a fun personality and we talk about all kinds of things. I know you're going to love this episode, so let's go ahead and dive in with Malisa. Hi, Malisa. How are you today?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm very excited to talk to you. You reached out to me about being on the podcast and chatting some more about the awesome things you've been up to. So I love to have guests on the podcast. So I cannot wait to interview you today.
Well, I'm so excited and so nice to meet you.
Yes, you too. So let's get started. Tell us a little bit about who you are and your background in education.
Okay, I found education kind of in an odd way. My background is actually in social work. So I got a master's in social work way back in 2007 and primarily have done hospice social work. And then my middle child, he was born to be a middle child. And so he just had a lot of real typical struggles in school, but it wasn't, unless you work in a school, you kind of don't know what they're talking about, And so I want to become a teacher to, be the teacher that I wish Jake would have. Mm-hmm. And then I did that by way of emergency certification. And honestly, day one, I wanted to quit, but I just had too much pride. And so I was like, okay, well, we did this. We're going to stick to it. I now understand a lot more after one day. So I lasted 3 years, the third year being the year we all got sent home for COVID. And then I said, I think that possibly, just the relationship side of this is probably what I'm better suited for. So I moved into the school counseling role then. So that's your long-winded answer.
No, I love it. I love it. And I think that's so cool. I noticed that you had the background in social work. And I do see some counselors who have that same background, but I think that's really cool that you were a teacher as well. I didn't know that part.
Yeah. I mean, it was fun, but I was not good at it. I mean, I'm not going to lie about it. I was really good at making relationships. That was all I was good at.
Yeah, I think I would be a terrible teacher as well. It's definitely a different skill set.
Yes. Yeah. Those people have different brains. That's all I know.
So how long have you been counseling now?
This is my 4th year counseling.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you find that it's like a hybrid between the social work position and I know you weren't working with kids necessarily then.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, honestly, because so much of what we do is referrals, linking them to resources, so that's exactly what I've always done. And so the transition in that way was really easy because I actually felt like really well suited for that part of things because I had this whole bank of resources. So that was really exciting.
Yeah, that's amazing. And what do you love about school counseling?
What I love about school counseling truly is teaching kids the same stuff that like I'm really passionate about learning, and connecting with them when they look at me. For people who won't see what I look like, I'm a white lady with blonde hair, and I work in an inner city school. So there are a lot of preconceived notions about me. You can't see, but I also have a lot of tattoos, so that helps a little bit. It gives me a little bit of street cred. But they make assumptions right away because I don't look like them. But when I get to tell them a little bit of my background and how I ever landed in their school to begin with, and childhood stuff, they see I'm not that different than them, and I didn't come to this role for like no reason, and
Right.
I came to be here for them, and I'm getting to do that. And so watching them discover that I'm not who they thought I was, and that I'm sure you know what I'm talking about when you watch a child decide to trust you. I mean, it happens right there in front of you. And I think that's my favorite part. Like right there, just, okay, I see it. I saw the look, like you're okay with me now. And I just live for that.
Yes. Oh, I love that. That's so true. A lot of times on the podcast, we talk about when you notice when a kid kind of like gets a concept, and they kind of like click and that understanding. But we haven't really mentioned that piece before about clicking in terms of like they trust you all of a sudden. And I know exactly what you mean.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it takes a lot longer, with some
Yeah.
others. It has to be well earned. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I love that. That's so true. And remind me, did you say you were elementary or middle? What's your grade?
Elementary. Yeah. Now our district made a bunch of changes a few years ago. And so our elementary actually only goes to fourth now, which makes me kind of sad, because fifth and sixth are such developmental big years, so I wish I still got to see those kids, but yeah, we only go to fourth.
Okay. And what would you say a day in the life looks like for you? I know every day is different for counselors.
Yeah.
To give us like an example.
If I'm being 100% honest, this year, my focus really has been more on, like, I'm being very intentional with my interactions with the adults in the building. And so most, like a really regular day involves some form of acts of kindness, just trying to boost morale. Education's in a really tough place right now, especially in Oklahoma, which we won't get into, but um, people are hurting, and I think that the people who are drawn to education in the first place are such sweet people and caring people, and they want to help and save the world. And when you're that person and you're facing all of the struggles that we can face on any given day in education, it's not for the tenderhearted all the time. And so I'm really focused on making sure that if I see somebody struggling, I'm there for them.
Oh, I love that. So what are you doing in order to increase staff morale or support your colleagues?
Well, what I started over the summer, I really developed a whole year, like actually planned out the entire year in a way that I haven't before, and allowed them to have access to that so that they would just more common language and stuff. And then while I was creating that, I decided to make this entire like slides presentation where every week I sent out like a mental health, I think I call it like mental health update, mental health moment or whatever, links to resources. I link to the EAP program in every single one, how to contact me, and then daily like affirmations, and just a quick piece of advice, a tip on self-regulation, because if the adult in the room's not regulated, nobody else is going to be. And I'm determined by the end of existence that everybody's going to understand that in education. If you're not regulated, they're not regulated. So
This slide deck you're talking about, you send to the teachers, not to the students.
I send it out to staff every week.
Okay. Okay, awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
That's the thing I think we don't talk about enough is how, as counselors, we can support staff as well as students, right?
Right. Well, the thing, absolutely. And that's the thing right there is it's the same thing for adults as we talk about with students, because we all forget that we are just grown children who have the same needs. And so for me, I just think that we have to, if you want the people in your building to buy into your way of doing things, because every counselor does it a little bit different, and every teacher's got a favorite counselor, and they're going to compare you to that counselor for their whole career. And that's okay, because you have your own strengths, and I don't take that stuff personally, because a lot of that's about relationships anyway. So I think that if you want them to follow the behavior plan that you've implemented, or et cetera, that you have to build a relationship with them too. I'm a relationship person, so it's easy for me to want to do that. It's not easy for everybody to want to form those types of relationships with adults. So I can understand that, but I do, you have to care at least.
That's so funny what you said about having a favorite counselor, because I remember my first year, the teachers, they were like a tough group. Like I had to earn their respect. Trust. Like they were kind of, giving me a hard time, trial by fire.
Oh gosh, yes.
They ended up being great. They were just like tight knit, had worked together for a long time, and I was the new person. But I know the former counselor, I didn't even know her well, but she and one of the teachers who I had the most difficult time bonding with, they used to like be best friends and do like karaoke together outside. And I was like, I'm never going to get her trust.
Yeah. And really, they're just grieving over the fact that their friend left, but they're going to take it all out on you.
Yeah. That's so funny. Awesome. So you said your day in the life, you're trying to make those connections and support staff as much as possible. Calling all new school counselors. If you're an intern, just graduated, or recently hired, this is for you. I have a free training series for you called New School Counselor Boot Camp. And this 5-part training will be covering how to make the most of your internship, rocking the interview process, how to prepare your office, setting up for a successful and stress-free school year, and your first 30, 60, and 90-day to-do list. So go to stressfreeschoolcounseling.com/bootcamp to sign up. What about with students? What are your interactions with students like?
Gosh, right now, I mean, everybody knows at the end of the year that things are kind of hectic. So for me, I'm probably at this juncture putting out more fires than anything, because it's hard to be proactive when everybody's schedule is messed up from testing and, end of the year activities. So, because that's really been my stance from actually learning what school counseling is, because that was a real steep learning curve. We had a really good in-service one day from a lady from the State Department of Education, and finally I understood what I was supposed to be doing. So I was like, okay, well, that's great. Let's start doing that. But I do, since then, have always tried to be really proactive in the tier 1 instruction and making sure I'm reaching that percentage of kids and whatever. This year's been unique. The challenges have been unique. I think we'll see that every year. But daily right now is just bonding with kids, just making sure that, we've had kids who have experienced so much this year, and I'm just making sure that I've made them feel safe. And, right now I've implemented a lot of behavior plans. So I'm doing a lot of check-ins and, altering the behavior plan because it wasn't working or whatever, You
mentioned that in-service was super helpful in defining like what you're supposed to be doing as a school counselor. What were some of your takeaways that you found helpful from that?
Well, like I mentioned, proactive versus reactive, that finally clicked. I was like, oh, okay. And it's not like I didn't know about tier 1 instruction and the benefits of it and the purpose. But when you're hearing it in conjunction with everything else, that was my big takeaway. Proactive versus reactive. So do your tier 1 instruction and hit that 80%, because 80% will listen and implement the things that you're teaching if you're consistent, especially if you've developed relationships with the teacher and they're using the common language. That's great. Then, everybody's winning at that point. Then you're identifying who can utilize small groups and do that. And then you should have a very small percentage of one-to-one kids. Exactly. So I think when I say unique challenges for this year, I don't know that there's, and I'm really not being like mean about my students, but there's just so much going on this year. It's been very overwhelming because I'm like, well, every single one of these kids needs a group. I can't run 35 groups in a month. I just can't, so figuring out how to meet somebody's needs in a very small amount of time, because there's 100 more, so that's a daily activity.
Definitely. And I think that's so true. It's where we almost have to, triage, like, okay, everyone needs it. Who needs it most right now? And then I love that you're saying giving the teachers the common language, or I'm always telling the counselors, like, teach the teachers. Like, if you spend time investing in like one training where you can teach the teachers something, and then they can implement it every day. Because if you're going in once a month for your class lesson,
right,
forcing it every day, then that's helpful.
Well, and that was I forgot that I did this, but that was another thing that I did over the summer was develop. So part of that year-long plan included, okay, I'm going to teach this, but now I sent them, the teachers, the follow-up lessons, and I did it in a morning meeting format to where they could add a slide to their morning meeting that would just very briefly cover, like, hey, who remembers what empathy is or whatever, and then a quick activity if they want to do it, but they don't have to. And then I've also like attached more resources for that particular topic to their slides. So I'm trying to, give them information, but the thing for me is sometimes I feel like I'm counseling, like school counseling with the teachers too, when you're teaching them, because this is not information that everybody's heard all the time, which is always a surprise for us because this is the stuff we love. We want to connect in this way, and this is what feeds us and, fuels us. But I'm always surprised whenever like so many adults just have no idea about regulation and all the things that we're teaching. And I'm like, oh, this is very fun. I get to teach you too.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean. When we're so interested in it, it's hard to remember that not everyone needs. Earlier, you were talking about how this time of year is kind of crazy. Mm-hmm. Schedules are all over the place. This episode's going to air in May, so I know a lot of people are wrapping up the school year. What tips do you have for like tying up loose ends at the end of the school year?
Well, my big focus this year is going to be like, even starting now, making sure teachers are not using the phrase countdown to summer break, things like that, because so many of our kids are not they want to sleep in, but that's about the best part of, going home. And so that will be a big push this year. I do any of the data stuff the district requires. But that's just, I use data for myself, but that's not something I don't have to defend my position a whole lot because of the changes that our district made years ago, right now. And that's not to say that I don't have all the same stuff that every school counselor goes through with staff and district stuff, but I don't feel the need to advocate for my role as much as I have in past years. So I'm not providing the data in a way that I did before to defend my role. So it's, to me, not as much of a priority. Another priority for me would be making sure that students know how to get any type of help they could possibly need in the summertime if that comes up, because I'm a huge proponent for boundaries. So if one of them reached out via email over the summer and it was, a really big deal, I would help with that, but I wouldn't want to make that like a habit, because I believe in taking care of myself on my off time. And those kids are going to have this set of circumstances their whole life. So I can't be their hero, but I can link them and refer them and advocate for them, which is what I do every day. And so for the summertime, I just want to make sure that I've provided them electronically in, handing them something, just different information for who to call if there's a crisis or whatever, because for our students, that's a very real possibility.
I love that. Two things I want to touch on. First, I love that you brought up this countdown to summer break thing, because I have a resource called Countdown to Summer Break. And I'm always like, yeah, Countdown to Summer Break. But that's so true. Depending on the population you work with, like tons of kids don't want to go home for the summer. Like school is their safe place, right?
Right.
And
Well, school has food. Yeah.
right, exactly. Yeah. And they might have a lot of anxiety about summer coming up,
Yeah.
So
And I use your countdown to breaks,
I'm not I'm just like, that's so eye-opening. It's just so important to say, like, every population is different. Some schools it might be a good fit, but it may definitely be like a struggle for some kids. You don't want to increase their anxiety with certain activities. So that's really
right.
mindful of. I love that. And I love, so instead of doing something like that, doing, like you said, providing them with what to do if they experience crisis over the summer. Because you're right, that's not a sustainable approach for them to email you in the middle of your summer vacation, but connecting them preventatively, in case something happens, here's what you do. I love that. Also, the second thing I was thinking, I like that you were saying you don't feel the need to like fight for your role right now because it's established the need for your role, which is wonderful. That's where we hope all of our counselors are. But it was making my gears kind of turn on that preventative piece, like even though you're not fighting for your role necessarily, just like pushing out little data touch points, like reminder, I'm still rocking it over here,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think I think that's an important piece, just because I need to remember that it's not just me I'm advocating for. So I think that's an important reminder.
Yeah, definitely. Awesome. Well, this has been awesome. I've loved hearing from you.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to a new school counselor?
Well, my first piece of advice would touch on what we talked about when we first started talking, was just know that like you're going to be popular with some people right away, and then other people you're not. And the thing is that I know that you became a school counselor for a reason, and you want everyone to like you. I get it. And they're just not. And so I think, like all careers, coming into school counseling, knowing exactly who you are and the things that you personally believe in, and don't bend on those things, and hold those boundaries, then you're going to be really successful. But it is hard to know, because listen, when I took that certification test, I didn't even know what those questions were asking, let alone what the answers were. I have become a good test taker through the teaching, certification process. But when you look at the ASCA website, if you're not traditionally trained in school counseling, you don't understand a word that they're saying. So if you do find your way in this field by way of alternative routes, you got to be willing to ask questions and lose any ego that you have, because there's just not room, because there are going to be a lot of other egos in every room that you walk in, and it's not your job to manage those. It's only your job to manage yourself, and you just be true to yourself and the things that you feel are important for you and your students, and just try to build relationships with everyone in your building.
I think that's some great advice. Now, also, Malisa, you've recently become an author. Can you tell us a little bit about that and the books that you read?
So actually, I released a book about my story from childhood almost 3 years ago, I believe. And that was called Owning My Crazy. And it's a really short book, but it was a really important story for me to get out. And then because of that, I went through the self-publishing process for that, but I did pay for a lot of the work to be like the cover and editing and whatever. And then in October, I wrote this story for a school-wide bullying presentation. And I was trying to make sure my kids were engaged in the lesson. And so I listed actual names from our school, used our school name, whatever. And then I was like, man, this would be fun to like turn into an actual book, but I was not really being serious about it. And then a friend of mine was saying, hey, I want to do that, but I'm really scared of the process. So I just started playing around with how to make a cover and how to like actually format a book. I knew how to write one and I knew some stuff, but really I didn't know how to like do all the steps. So I just kind of played around with it just to see if you could. And that first one became a book so easily, but it's, my counselors are going to understand that the story was not like, don't be a bully. It was, please stop using the word bully for every little thing, because we can't take care of bullying if you're calling, her accidentally elbowing you bullying. Please, for the love of all, just listen. But it was an important message, but not necessarily like, I'm sure there'd be a couple counselors that, would check that out from their school library or whatever. But so I was like, well, what else can I do? So then I made a whole book about like kindness, empathy. Like I referenced actual lessons that I've done, and the way I teach them. And I've just had so much fun that I'm like, man, we're just going to keep on. I have a 9-year-old, almost 10-year-old daughter, and she's been a big part of the project. And so we're just like having a great time coming up with like characters, and because I've used AI technology for illustrations, and that's been a challenge but a fun one, because we get to like kind of make fun of some of the silly stuff that it does. And it's just been so much fun. So I'm just going to keep releasing those. And I'm actually going to re-release that first book with some added stuff, and I'm just having fun with it.
That's awesome. I love it, because I feel like so many counselors are writing their own stories. Like you said, like we know there's a lack of resources out there, and every it's different. So sometimes you're like, okay, I'm going to write this story that'll resonate with my kids because I know their unique challenge. A lot of counselors are doing this for themselves already. So it's cool to see this as something you were just doing for your own kids, but then you're like, maybe someone else could benefit from it too.
Right. Yeah.
Love it. Awesome. Well, we'll link to those in the show notes if anyone wants to check those out.
I appreciate it.
One of our Impact members too for a while now.
Yes. Oh man, you have no idea how much you saved my life. I don't even know how I found you, honestly, because it has been so long. I'm sure that I bought resources from you from TPT forever ago. And then at some point in one of those resources, I subscribed to your blog or whatever, your newsletter or whatever it is that gets sent to my email. And I was like, oh, I like this. And so I went in, and man, your curriculum, so comprehensive. It's so good. I love your group stuff too. And I love that if I have to, I can pull a group thing and work on a one-on-one. Or vice versa. I feel like I know your style really well now because you're really consistent in your delivery. And so I can kind of move things around and add, and, and then if I lose my little feelings check-in sheet, I can grab it from another group thing. I love your stuff. I cannot thank you enough. You are invaluable to the counseling profession.
Oh, well, that's very kind. Thank you. I love that you're an Impact member. Thank you. It's so cool. And I can't wait to share with our community inside Impact your books, and let them know one of our own is now an author, which is so exciting.
I thank you so much. And thank you for letting me come on here. This was so fun.
So fun. Well, thank you so much, Melissa. If people want to follow up with you or connect with you, where should we send them?
Probably Facebook or Instagram's the easiest place to find me, just because emails are tricky and whatever, but I'll accept your follow request or whatever. So you just come on.
Okay, awesome. Well, we'll link to everything in the show notes. Thanks for your
Absolutely. Have a great day.
It was so much fun getting to connect with Melissa and get to know her better. I always love to hear what my Impact members are up to and what a difference they're making at their school. And don't forget, guys, I really hope that I'll see you next week for my summer SEL toolkit training. I'll be sharing you how you can extend your reach and work with families over the summer to help support your students' social emotional skills. It's a free training. You're also going to get a free PD certificate of attendance and a free resource to use. So there's really a no-brainer here. Just show up, go to stressfreeschoolcounseling.com/training to save your seat. Okay, I'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening to School Counseling Simplified. You can find the links from today's episode in the show notes. If you'd like to connect with Rachel, she's on Instagram and Teachers Pay Teachers at Bright Futures Counseling. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any episodes of School Counseling Simplified. Talk to you next week.